On this edition of Native Report, we meet artist Tony Abeyta and explore his sense of the world around him through his art. We visit one of the most influential art schools of the Southwest, the Institute of American Indian Arts in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And we meet Kevin Washburn, the busy dean of the University of New Mexico School of Law. We also learn something new about Indian country and hear from our elders on this Native Report.
Production of Native Report is made possible by grants from the Shakopee-Mdewakanton Sioux Community, the Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe, and the Blandin Foundation.
Welcome to Native Report. I'm Stacy Thunder. Artist Tony Abeyta considers himself a regionalist, that much of what he does as an artist is tied to Native culture and place. His individual style incorporates bold colors, rich textures, and representations of Navajo deities.
The aha moment, that I was going to be a painter was I couldn't work for people anymore. I had jobs all throughout high school, and I realized I couldn't, work for another boss. He said, "You're late, you're fired." I couldn't do it anymore. So I thought, well, it's all or nothing. Either I'm going to be extremely good at one thing or great at one thing and not good at a bunch of little things. I was a good projectionist, and I was good at picking up after people in the movie theaters, and I could count out the registers, and I could call in all of the information at the end of the night. But, I wasn't really good at mathematics. I was not a great student, but I had a good work ethic. I could paint.
Tony Abeyta grew up in Gallup, New Mexico, and cites his mother and father as great influences upon him becoming an artist.
I never really wanted to be an artist, but it just seemed to happen through the osmosis of my father, and my mother was a very creative person as well. Art was something that people did as a hobby, is my understanding. So, my father never really made a living off of painting, although he had work in museums and he was renowned. We grew up pretty poor, so we struggled a lot. So I never thought of art as being an option to do full time. So I thought graphics art or, advertising. So this was the mentality I thought of it, 15 years old. And then at some point I saw an exhibition of art here in Santa Fe, New Mexico. I came to the Institute of American Indian Arts, and it was of contemporary Native American painters. And in that exhibition was a group of artists from all over the country. A lot came from the Institute of American Indian Arts. And they were the movers and the shakers of progressive, contemporary Indian art. And I just said, wow, this is like a whole movement. This is something new and something different. And somehow I wanted a part of that.
In addition to attending the Institute of American Indian Arts, Tony studied in New York, Chicago, and even Florence, Italy.
Florence had this whole history of art, and some of the most phenomenal Renaissance art was created not only in architecture, painting. I remember going in to a museum for the first time and looking at just the floors. They were all mosaiced and all this really amazing serpentine and marble, and everything was parquet, and there were these amazing frescoes and bas-reliefs and things that I'd never seen. So it's sort of a just experience of seeing things that you've only looked at in a book. And I always recommend for anybody who's a student of art to be able to get out and go see the context in which art was created. So not just going, into a book of art, and not just going into a museum, but being able to actually see the south of France gives you a much better insight to who Van Gogh was, for example.
These travels and experiences have formed who he is as a person, a Native man, and the artist he has become.
I grew up as a fairly urban Indian, so I was always sort of, living in not only a small town of Gallup, New Mexico, but uprooted and then taken to cities all over the country, all over the world. And so part of that dislodging from a sense of place and from the culture is all about finding it and rediscovering it. So for me, through my art, which is not only a meditative experience and a spiritual endeavor, I'm able to really discover, a lot of what the experience of being Navajo is, what that experience about, our mythology and our belief systems and our relationship to the cosmos and to this, to the underworld. All of these things are part of how I think. Those are all my vocabulary, and those are all part of a cultural theme that is not even my own. It's ours. It's intertribal, and it's also part of a way that we believe in our environment, our world. These are the things that I'm stimulated and inspired by. So my art is about, my people, but in general, it's about all of us.
Drawing is another medium Tony has worked with from time to time, and recently he ventured into another art form.
I've been a painter for, I don't know, like I said, maybe 20 years, I think. And I've diversified. So I've done sculpture. I did stone sculpture, but it took too long. And drawing is an important part of how I work, and it's completely different from the painting. The imagery is completely different. So I paint with different hats on. Recently started doing jewelry, and that said, jewelry's been a really interesting, because it's such a Navajo experience. It's so much about, silver and stones and, craftsmanship and design. There's very simple sorts of design elements that go into it, and composing, and in it itself is a whole different way of thinking. It's hard for me to go from expansive, huge paintings down to these kind of filigree sort of, bezels and stamp work, or these things are changing my world. It's like my small universe expanding from this down to this.
Tony has mentored emerging artists as well as his own children. The one bit of advice he gives is each artist must go through his or her own experience.
I will intermittently go back and teach a couple classes at the Institute of American Indian Arts. I work with other younger artists just to sort of give them support, whether that's like, I like what you're doing, I'll buy that little painting, but I try to keep a connection to what's happening, what's current in contemporary Indian art. And always, if I see somebody doing something that I think is good, is amazing, I try to bring it to my attention, to the attention of my clients, to a host of networks of galleries that I know, and I'll say, hey, you ought to look at this person's work, and give them a show. And sometimes they do, and that's the best thing you can do in sort of a young upcoming artist's life, is try to give them a community and a community of support.
For Tony Abeyta, an empty canvas is full of possibilities, and it's the same for the future.
I don't really set goals as much as I did when I was younger. Like, I want to be, in this school, I want to graduate, I want to have a studio, I want big giant canvases, and so much of that has happened. So for me, I'm sort of embarking on getting close to, like, I'm going to be 50 pretty soon. And I look at that as sort of a marking point. What have I really achieved in, this span of time that I've been doing art? And, my goal, if I have any now, is just to continue being a painter. Sometimes people have to throw in the towel. There's always, I hear experiences of people, oh, hey, Tony, I'm selling my art supplies. And I hear that, and I'm like, yeah, that's the wrong direction. But people refine and redefine their lives, and sometimes art's not, creating it's not always the most responsible thing to do. But I want to continue painting and making art until I'm 96 years old, and then I'm going to retire.
Did you know Navajo people have been recognized as extraordinary artists? Navajo women weave blankets expressing warmth, earth colors, and unique designs. These designs often depict earth-like patterns or figures of Navajo spiritual significance. Jewelry is another artistic strength of the Navajo people. Silversmithing dates back to the 1800s, when Navajo artists began melting silver coins to make jewelry. Large chunks of stones, usually turquoise, got added to create unique designs. Over time, they developed tools to stamp and engrave the metal. Finally, traditional sand painting is considered a sacred art. The artist or healer slowly releases colored sand patterns to wood. Ceremonial sand paintings are not created to last permanently. Navajo sand painting images are reproduced on rugs, drawings, and plywood for consumer use.
The Institute of American Indian Arts in Santa Fe is an accredited college offering a full range of academic classes in addition to what they're known for, developing artists. The school's mission is to empower creativity and leadership in Native arts and cultures through higher education, lifelong learning, and outreach. Most classes were done for the day as shadows stretched across the outdoor commons of the Institute of American Indian Arts. The school has its beginnings in the 1960s.
It actually started with Lloyd Kivanu, with the Pueblos here, the galleries and others that were already here, the Indian market that was here. So this was a logical place to place the Institute of American Indian Arts. It started out as a high school, evolved into a post-secondary institution, and eventually it was accredited to offer associate degrees. And then in the 2001, it was accredited to offer bachelor's degrees. So we now offer bachelor's and BFAs here at the Institute of American Indian Arts. We have the largest collection of contemporary Native art in the world, and it's more than 7,500 pieces. And this past summer, we moved it to the main campus from our museum off of the plaza in downtown Santa Fe. And so we have a viewing gallery room where people can go in, and we're going to have display units that pull out, and you can see the wonderful collection that we have. So that collection now will be more accessible for scholarship, for conservation efforts. We're hoping that people will come and study and then publish articles about the collection that we have. So we're very proud of it.
Over 100 tribes are represented in a student body that numbers well over 300. That diversity is the school's strength.
Our enrollment has increased by 50% in the last 3 years, and we hope to double it by 2012. So we want to make sure that our programs are accessible to people, so we're looking at distance education technologies. We've got a couple of classrooms that we've converted that are totally equipped for online learning, and we'll be serving the Pueblos as well as the local communities here and the Indian nations throughout the country. Because a lot of our courses are unique. You're not going to find a museum studies program, a BFA, or a bachelor's degree in museum studies from a Native perspective that serves Native museums. So a lot of our programs are unique, and we want to serve Indian country throughout the nation.
What brought me to IAI is that I like to do art. And I've always done art since I was little. It's just a natural talent I've always had. And it was good to be around people like me, who are like me, see the creative thought, and to be around more Native people, because I could have went to any other art school. I like school here because I get along with a lot of people, and like we feed off of each other's energy, and I really like it, and I get ideas from other people, and I learn from my peers as well.
In addition to the full range of courses in studio arts, creative writing, and indigenous studies, one of the fastest growing programs is new media arts.
We offer bachelor's and associate degrees in all of the studio arts. And painting, of course, has always been one of our popular programs. Photography, metalsmithing, sculpture. You can see throughout our campus we have some of our students' work on display. So the studio arts is, of course, that's what we're known for. But we also have the museum studies program as well as creative writing. Our graduates have published books. They've published books of poetry. They're professors at various places. We've even hired some of our own alumni to come back and to teach in the program. We also opened the Science and Technology Building, which houses our museum studies, as well as new media arts, which includes a digital dome with 6 projectors, and so you're totally immersed in the images, and we plan to use that for storytelling, of course science, astronomy, but also the studio arts. And our students will be able to, when they're presenting their work, the audience will be immersed in their images.
As an art school in a city renowned for its art and having a largely Native student population, it would only be natural to form relationships with the communities in and around Santa Fe.
It's been said that the Institute of American Indian Arts is one of the best kept secrets here in Santa Fe, and we're trying to change that. We're becoming more engaged with the community. We're inviting them not only to come to our museum off of the plaza, but to come to main campus. We now have an annual open house, and we just had one several weeks ago. And we invited members from the community, and I think we had 500 or 600 people here, and they were able to see our faculty demonstrating their talents, their artwork. They were able to see our students and how creative and talented they are. In terms of the Pueblos and the other tribes, we are a 1994 land-grant institution, which means we have a special relationship with the United States Department of Agriculture, and one of our obligations is to address the agricultural and natural resources needs of the tribes in this area. So we're just beginning to do that, and we're going to be establishing an orchard here and gardens and a greenhouse. That's all in planning stages. And so we hope to better serve the Pueblos as well as the Navajo Nation and other tribes here in New Mexico and throughout this region.
What I believed was that, as Indian people and growing up in our communities, we're really the experts about who we are, and that we are the ones that should be articulating our needs and advocating our interests, because we know ourselves the best. And I felt strongly that we needed to ask for those things and make recommendations about what we needed. And I found that to be an effective way of causing things to happen. Sometimes people don't know, what we need or what we want unless we let them know. You don't know, I don't know what you know, and you don't know what I'm thinking sometimes. And so, we need to have that communication, and we need to be clear about, who we are. And I, emphasize that to young people, the importance of, asking and expressing, those things that are important to us. And I would say, just think, if you asked for something for your community or your kids and only got 50% of what you asked for, that's 50% more than you would have gotten if you didn't ask. Or maybe you might get more. So, it's our responsibility. Be prepared to take advantage of those opportunities to advocate for our community and our people's interests.
Kevin Washburn, Dean of the University of New Mexico School of Law, has one distinction that separates him from his peers. He is the only Native American dean of a law school in the continental United States. Fate had a hand in Kevin Washburn's decision to leave Washington, D.C. for an academic position. But as a child, he knew law was his future.
I was serving at the National Indian Gaming Commission as the general counsel in a political position, and I was serving a job that had a shelf life that was coming to a close, and And I'd always wanted to try teaching, and so that was an opportune time to go into teaching. My wife was actually working in Congress at the time on the Hill, on Capitol Hill, and I went to the interviews, the law school interviews, right after 9/11 happened, and my wife had to take Cipro because of the anthrax scare in the Hart Senate office building. She was working for the United States Senate, and before we moved out to Minnesota, the D.C. sniper thing was going on, if you recall that. It was a horrible time in Washington, D.C. My wife loved her job, and so but for all those calamities, I don't know if I would have been able to get her to move to Minnesota so that I could join the University of Minnesota Law School faculty. So in some respects, things work out for a reason. I wanted to be a lawyer since about 4th grade, not for any good reason, I don't think, but honestly, it was sort of a search for legitimacy. I was raised by a single mother, and I think that I wanted to be respected. And, you know, growing up Indian in Oklahoma, raised by a single mother, you know, you feel prejudice and that sort of thing. And so I wanted to establish legitimacy and be able to fight for myself. And so that was sort of the path to law school.
As dean, he is administrator to over 30 faculty members, 330 students, and an additional 130 support staff.
This law school tends to be very embedded in the community and in the public policy decisions in the state. So I spend a lot of time helping the state with various things. In addition to that, I teach a criminal law class, and I try to continue to do some scholarship. I'm a very busy guy. As a successful professional in any area, it's very difficult to find balance. There's not a big, bright dividing line between my personal life and my professional life. It all blends together, and I'm fortunate that my family thinks that's okay.
Washburn's background as a graduate from Yale Law School, a teacher at several universities, including Harvard, an attorney for the Justice Department, and a federal prosecutor in New Mexico, make him a sought-after speaker.
I get asked a lot to come speak at various events. I'm the only American Indian dean in the country currently, so there's a lot of people, I think, just because I'm in this position, want me to come speak, both nationally and certainly here in New Mexico. I think here in New Mexico they don't care so much that I'm American Indian, but I'm the dean of the state's law school. And, you know, in Minnesota there are 4 law schools. In New Mexico there's only 1 law school, and we just occupy this position where it's important for the dean to be present at a lot of events. I speak at county bar associations all over the state. I get out to some of the pueblos and tribes now and then, and I speak at any national conference that comes to town involving Indians.
The list of former students and alumni reads as a who's who of the Indian law community. And that area of study is what separates UNM from other schools of law.
In the 1960s, the late 1960s, we started a program called the Pre-Law Summer Institute, which was also called the Special Scholarship Program for Indians in Law. And we had people from all over the country come to the University of New Mexico Law School for a summer program right before law school began. And it was a boot camp. It was to help them succeed in law school. Larry Echohawk went to the program and went off to BYU Law School, I believe, and then became Attorney General of Idaho and is now the Assistant Secretary. Kevin Gover, in contrast, came to the summer program and then came here to law school, and then also became an Assistant Secretary and is now Director of the National Museum of the American Indian. John Echohawk went through the program and then founded NARF. So it's an all-star cast of people, those, especially the ones that came here in the late 60s and early 70s. This program is more than 40 years old now, and we think of all of those students, those former students who are now attorneys and tribal leaders and tribal attorneys and state legislators and state judges, and they're all over the country. We think of all of them as alums of our program. Many of them did come to the law school after that summer program. Lately, there's been, I think, a slight fall-off in the number of Indian students attending, especially male students attending. The female cohort has remained strong, but there are fewer men applying, and that gives us some concern. So, you know, we're trying to figure out why that is. That's happening to all minorities. The men are falling out, but you know, we try to attend to this very closely and very carefully. We have about 30 students at any given time, Indian students, here at the law school. It's about 10% of our population. So we have about 10 students in each year of law school that are American Indian. We here at New Mexico try to ensure that people enjoy the practice of law. So we tell people on the first day that you will work hard and you will be challenged and you will be stressed out occasionally in law school, but have fun, because if you go to law school, you need to enjoy the practice of law, because it'll be a long career if you don't enjoy it. So wherever you go to law school, I would say have fun, learn to engage and enjoy the law, because hopefully this will become your profession and you will change the world with your law degree.
For more information about Native Report or the stories we've covered, look for us on the web at nativereport.org. Thank you for spending this time with your friends and neighbors in Indian Country. I'm Stacy Thunder. See you next time on Native Report.
Stacy Thunder is a member of and legal counsel for the Red Lake Nation, and Tad Johnson is a member of the Boys Fort Band of Chippewa and is chair for the American Indian Studies Department on the campus of the University of Minnesota Duluth.